The applicant is proposing to rezone 1.015 acres of a fill area in Shackett Creek from OUC, which is open use conservation, 1 unit per 25 acres, to RSF1. I'm going to get to where that zoning is in a minute. That's what they're proposing is to, you can see on the left, that's the existing zoning. What they want to do is take that area that's outlined in blue here and make it yellow, zone it to RSF1. That consists of 1.015 acres. And then what they're doing and what they're terming a swap, rezone swap, I'm reluctant to use that term, is to rezone approximately 1.43 acres, which is currently zoned RSF1 to OUC, and not build on that portion of the property. That's in summary, what they're trying to do is take two areas and literally swap the zoning, move the zoning to where they want to build a single-family residence. What you're looking at is currently vacant property that's much of which is affected by Shackett Creek. As you can see, the water's literally there, and much of this is wetlands. The applicant's proposing to develop one single-family residence on, actually, let me go back here a minute and say that the future land use of the property is moderate density residential, which is shown by the yellow color. And the two parcels that are the subject of this rezone are highlighted with the shading on them. And as you can see, everything in that area is designated moderate density residential, which is defined as greater than or equal to 2 to less than 5 units per acre on the future land use map. This is looking north from literally from the subdivision, adjoining subdivision to the south. Again, you can see where the arrow is at the subject property, that Shackett Creek in the foreground. About where they want to build the house is, if I can get the cursor to work here, right about in here. And it's right along Shackett Creek. That's literally standing with the permission of the owner in one of the backyards of the properties to the south that adjoin the subject property. And then across on Bayview Street, there is a private boat ramp adjacent to a home. Actually, when I was taking that photograph, the subject property is across the Shackett Creek. You're looking at it. I was talking to the owner of that property who lets people in that subdivision. Other people use that as a boat ramp to get out onto Shackett Creek, but it was a good place to take a photograph from, so it gives you a view of where I'm standing when I'm taking that and the subject property. About where they want to build the homes right in here. Much of if not all of the area to be rezoned to OUC is wetlands. There is a lot of wetlands up in this area, but there are some highlands too, some upland. This is a non-binding development concept plan because it's simply a rezone to RSF1 or into OUC, and those neither require a binding plan. Again, the areas to the east, west, and south are developed with residential lots, as you can see around Shackett Creek. The applicants are proposing to build one single-family residence on the property that borders the water course for Shackett Creek and does not adjoin other single-family residences in the area. You can see the area where they're trying to rezone to RSF1. It's where they want to build a house. There will be a triangular-shaped piece of property left at the corner, much of which is impacted by wetlands, but there is some highlands or uplands there. And that area in the northeast corner is 29,088 square feet, which is 0.667 acres, 2/3 of an acre. And that will remain. And yes, that's big enough to build a single-family residence on in that portion of the property, because I know that's a question you'd ask. Access to the RSF1 zone property that they're proposing will be by a driveway from Albee Farm Road. The proposed driveway will cross portions of Shackett Creek. I know you're going to hear about that, and will require a WNCA permit for development of that driveway. No access is all proposed to Laurel Road from this, but again, it's a non-binding plan, and again, that portion of the triangle in the northeast corner is a developable piece that could meet one single-family residence size in the RSF1 zoning district, so they could build up there if they wanted to. We have no recommended stipulations from any of the reviewing agencies.
My name is John Coda, and I have filled out a speaker's card. As was noted, I was with the Boone firm for 25 years, and this is my first opportunity to be in front of you all, so thank you. Here representing the applicants. My role this evening is just to take a few minutes and do a few things prior to getting into the nuts and bolts with the environmental specialist, Mr. Browse. I'm going to do a short bullet cap recap of the application as it stands, as we see it. We'll do a brief history of the land. You already discussed that to a certain extent. And third, we're going to preempt and address a few what we think are misstatements and misapprehensions contained within the infamous Stop the Swap petition that's being circulated. You ready? Okay, slide one. As for the property itself, we know that the Commission and the planners don't like to use the word swap, although I've heard it mentioned a few times already. But I understand why, but in this case, I think there's an argument that the term is inapplicable anyway, because our clients really aren't seeking to swap equal land for equal land. As I see it, their proposal actually provides a means by which the county will receive a greater level of benefits and protections for environmentally sensitive property than would be the case if the application had not been submitted at all. And I think that's something that Mr. Browse is going to touch on in a little bit regarding the planner's conclusions for this proposal. So I'm going to belabor a little bit of what's already been discussed. What our clients propose is to have a 1.43 acre parcel here, which is most of which is designated wetlands, rezoned from more intensive RSF1 to less intensive OUC. They would also have another smaller parcel of upland property of just over 1 acre, rezoned from OUC to RSF1. If we're going to call this a swap, then it benefits the county and the environment, in our opinion, because it means that almost 1.5 acres of designated wetlands, or whatever the amount might be, it's significant, it will now be zoned OUC, while a much smaller parcel of approximately 1 acre will be zoned RSF1. And this area that we're seeking to have rezoned is upland. And again, only one single family home is going to be constructed on that entire acre. So let's go back in time a bit. This is a 1957 aerial photo showing that before the improvements to Laurel Road and before the Prinebrook Road, before the Albee Farm Road was extended to meet it, there was a graded access path accessible from the southeast. All that area in white that you're seeing the cursor go across now was upland. Next slide. In 1974, by 1974, you can see that a portion of that southern boundary of the property was no longer graded with access to the consistently dry upland area, which is the area my clients would like rezoned. Access at that point was achieved from the north off of Laurel Road. And then again, we talked about this a little bit. By 1988, things had changed rather drastically because Laurel Road was improved with stormwater features, including a drainage easement at that time. So the effect of that, we think, was to essentially inundate the area formerly used for access, which cut off access from Laurel Road. Again, however, the area our clients seek to rezone to RSF1 was and is upland. Our clients researched the history of the parcels and discovered that back in 2006, a former prospective purchaser of the southern parcel submitted a site plan utilizing existing zoning classifications. So the home site that was proposed at that time within the wetlands area and the long dock had a long dock going out to Shackett Creek. Our client's proposal is on the right, and the next few slides will show you the difference between the two of them. The next one here, this is the 2006 proposal, whopping 28,717 square feet of impact to wetlands. In contrast, our client's proposal impacts less than 5,000 square feet of wetland, and most of that is near the entrance there off of Pine Brook where the driveway begins. And the last slide regarding that previous feature, it just shows a bar graph showing the difference of wetland impacted lands between those two proposals. And this is important. We do respect and appreciate the right of neighboring property owners and concerned citizens to speak to you here today. But we do want to make sure that the justifications for getting people's attention on this are accurate, and we do have some few bones to pick with regard to the petition that has been circulated, and just wanted to take a minute to discuss that. The first one suggests that our clients are requesting rezoning from Sarasota County and a swap of land from, quote, OUC wetland to RSF1. That's inaccurate. The OUC area requested to be placed in RSF1 is high and dry. It's not wetlands. This petition actually places much more wetlands into OUC, and the disturbed uplands area, overgrown with invasive vegetation. And again, this proposal would provide almost a half an acre more into the OUC designation than currently exists. Next one, and I think the next two points relate to the proposed driveway and the bridge, which the petition suggests is that they don't meet federal standards. Our legal analysis indicates that a private driveway to a single-family residence is exempt from compliance with federal roadway standards in this context. And it's already been corrected that the driveway width would not be 20 feet. It would actually be only 10 feet wide. And that kind of bleeds into the last point, which is that the permit these owners of the suggestion is in the petition that the permit that my clients have submitted is non-binding, which means they are not restricted to the amount of building they can build on the property. Yet, again, we beg to differ. It is. It's restricted to one single-family home per the zoning. Any further residential construction would require a different road, a different driveway design, different permits, far more complicated, environmentally sensitive, invasive process.
We also have a slide here, a couple of slides of the area where a culvert will be installed to make the connection for the driveway. The driveway is the piece, as already mentioned, that will have some wetland impacts that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection have looked at this and have signed off on it and are issuing a permit. And then from the words from the staff report that was made, the Sarasota County staff report, the proposal for rezoning is to take the disturbed upland portions of the parcel and designate them as RSF1 districts and to place the mangrove swamp and tidal marsh habitats in the OUC district. This reduces the overall size of the RSF district. And then this approach provides a better environmental outcome.
Joe Martini, I have signed a speaker's card. I strongly opposed the zoning swap from OUC to RSF1 from the current zoning on the subject properties. There are already two waterfront RSF1 properties on those same parcels. I do not oppose building on either of the existing RSF1 designated portions of those properties.
You all have mentioned this is just for one house. Is there do you have a stipulation, or would you be willing to make a stipulation that if this does go through, that you're just going to build a single-family house on the property?
I don't think that that they're willing to make that stipulation right now.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to know the answer.
Yeah.
So I read somewhere that perhaps a bridge was contemplated for the driveway access. Was that ever, or is it always a culvert?
During the discussions with U.S. Corps of Army Engineers, several options were explored. And finally, it was determined that the best option would be a culvert.
Okay.
So at that time, the option of a bridge was explored, but it was never determined to be such.
Okay. And as far as the permitting process, have you gotten any permits from the Army Corps? I know that there's been some documentation submitted, but is there an actual Army Corps permit on this?
Yes, yes. In order to have their involvement and to make sure that everything was being done as it should be, we were in contact with them very early on and went ahead and completed that process.
And DEP as well?
And DEP as well, yes.
Okay. I have a question for staff, unless someone else wants to, on another topic. Okay. Zoning? I have a zoning question. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Is there a precedent for a rezone from OUC to anything else, or in particular RSF, an RSF district or RMF district, anything like that? Has that ever occurred?
Not that I'm aware of. And for the record, Donna Thompson was zoning, and I have signed a speaker's card.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any such rezone, no.
Okay. I'm looking at Municode as far as how OUC is defined, but could you just, I don't want to give the testimony, so you tell me what OUC is, what the intent of it is, if you don't mind.
So the OUC district is intended to retain the open character of land. The district is further intended to preserve and protect native habitats, wilderness areas, marshlands, watersheds, water recharge areas, open spaces, parklands unless otherwise zoned GU, scenic areas, historical and archaeological resources, and beaches. It's used to establish wildlife and open space corridors as buffer areas to lands designated public resource lands on the future land use map, to protect life and property in areas subject to flooding, and to conserve fish and wildlife. The permitted uses are restricted to conservation and, with certain limitations, recreation and other uses that are not contrary to the open character of the district.
Okay, thank you. And do you know how long this has been zoned OUC, this property? No?
I would say at least since the 2003 code went into effect. I haven't looked
So
at the
for a while.
previous, yes.
Okay, and this was the zoning that was in place when the property was acquired?
Thank you.
Okay.
I see somebody here from Public Safety. Are you with the Fire Department? White shirt. Could I ask you a question?
Hello, I'm Tom Hicks. I'm a plan reviewer for the Fire Marshal's office. I have filled out a card.
Thank you. There was some testimony or some documentation within the application referencing concerns about the accessibility of safety vehicles. I'm going to assume that means fire, ambulance, things
Correct.
like that. And that the applicants had signed a waiver acknowledging the inadequacy of access for public safety vehicles. Can you clarify this for me?
That was done during the previous fire marshal's tenure. He made an agreement that with that letter that they realized we would not be driving down that road to put out a fire or whatever it is we would, rescue, that they realized that there was be a delay in their response. And it's considered a driveway, not an access road. The previous fire marshal agreed to that, and the current fire marshal has decided not to change that status.
So, barring the size of emergency vehicles shrinking, these owners have waived or acknowledged that, well, if I build a house, I take the risk of it burning down or my having a heart attack and somebody can't get to me. But that would then run with the land. Any future owner of that home would have to accept a condition of a lack or possibility of timely services from fire and rescue.
That would be
runs with the
correct.
land.
That's correct. There is
Is that a policy of our community that one homeowner can impose that on future homeowners in order to accommodate a more immediate need?
Not that I have ever seen other than this.
Okay.
Commissioner Pember, and then Commissioner Mast.
Donna, come back up real quick, please. I wanted to get it quick.
Getting some run, Donna.
So,
Gotta learn to
so
run faster.
while we're on Marine Park, water can't be zoned, right? The submerged land can be zoned.
Correct.
So the applicant owns the submerged land where that culvert would go. And if that's Marine Park, then that's their zoning. How could the public utilize that Marine Park if they own the submerged land?
I'm not sure they own the submerged land. They're trying to build over that area to get to their land.
Would anybody here know whether they own the submerged lands?
That
Or is that-
applicant may have to
'Cause if
answer
it-
that question.
If they
for
don't
us.
own it, then it's navigable waterway, I'm assuming.
Well, the zoning maps are showing MP around this area. They have open use and residential. They cannot build in the open use.
Right.
So they're trying to exchange so they can build out by the water. I'm not sure where the culvert is, if that strip is actually zoned MP or if that's part of the OUC that they own and the MP is out around their property. I need to look at the zoning map
Right.
to figure that out.
But if something's zoned, can the surface of water be zoned a certain zoning designation? Or is it only the subsurface of where that area in the water is zoned MP? Is it the surface of the water, or is it the submerged land that's actually zoned MP?
We're also trying to get to riparian rights.
That's, yeah, I mean, I'm
What are the
looking.
riparian rights?
That I might have to get Howard or somebody to help me with.
Okay.
Most of the submerged lands that I've dealt with have had the same zoning classification as the upland.
As the upland.
Yes.
Right.
So then they're combined together and can get the density. They just can't build on it,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Because the survey appears that their property extends out into Shackett Creek. And that's kind of getting into this navigable waterway and so forth, and who owns the ground, and how are they going to put a culvert on the ground if it's navigable, and the applicant doesn't own that submerged land. So, I mean, I don't know who can answer that question.
Howard is willingly stepping up.
Okay.
I've tried really hard not to have to come up here and talk to you tonight. I have not yet filled out a speaker's card, but I promise I will. My name is Howard Berna. I'm the manager for environmental permitting. I'm also serving as the WNCA ordinance administrator. And some of the conversation that you're having right now falls into the actual structures that they're proposing to build that are handled under the WNCA permitting. And some of the things you've talked about are things that would be handled at a building permit stage. So it's not really germane to the decisions that you have to make in regard to the land use changes that are being proposed tonight. But the property owners do own the submerged bottom to a point out into the creek.
Right.
So they do own the submerged lands. They do not own the water in a legal sense. I think our attorney would probably be able to speak to those. They do have riparian rights. The issue that should be recognized is that area where the crossing is going to be, where that culvert is a very shallow area. The bathymetric survey data that is shown on there shows that that water depth is less than 1 foot at mean low water. So there's limited amount of water. There is water going through there, but it's rather shallow. So only small-sized, we've heard testimony tonight, kayaks and paddle boards have utilized that area. The culvert would obviously not be designed in such a way to allow for paddle boarders to stand up and go through the culvert. But if someone were inclined to want to visit that tidal marsh, they could potentially enter the surface of the water on a paddleboard or a kayak at the northern entrance. That would still remain available to individuals on a kayak. Whether or not they want to go in there, what their objectives are, as soon as they step out of their kayak and put their feet on the ground, they're trespassing.
Right.
So it's that strange concept of you own the submerged lands, but you don't own the water. But the public has the right, through that use of the water, to traverse wherever a navigable vessel can take them.
Right, okay, all right.
Okay.
That was great.
We've had a bit of a go back and forth on what portion of the current RSF1 parcel is buildable. I would like to, I want to hone in on this because I think it's important. Is it still a plausible, buildable parcel? I know there are hurdles to jump through. I just want to know, is it still a buildable, plausible parcel?
I think it's RSF1. You're allowed to build on an RSF1 if you have a 15,000 square foot parcel size, you have 100 feet of width, and you can meet all the setbacks wherever you're going to put the building. How you can access that property is I think, part of the issue here. But, yeah, that property is clearly 1.015 acres. If they put this driveway through, which it would get access to that parcel, it's big enough and wide enough.
I'm not talking about the island. I'm talking about the current
Oh, the current
portion
RSF?
that is RSF1, that abuts Albee Farm Road and Laurel.
That area that's going to remain, well, the current area is one that they're proposing to change is 1.43 plus the 2/3 of an acre or 0.67 that would be left if they were successful in getting out of the change. I suppose that simple math would say that's about 2 acres roughly. And I don't know what portion of that is wetland. I think I'm going to have to defer to Brian here about what portion of that is wetland.
Okay,
what
Brian,
portion is
let's
upland.
try this, Brian.
The simple answer is yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
they can today come in, require or attempt to obtain building permits, and then we would go through a process of judging the impacts, reducing and minimizing where avoidable and possible, and figuring out what sort of mitigation would be permissible to repair the impacts that were done to create the home sites.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I won't take nearly that long. Just wanted to make a few comments with regard to some of the citizen comments. A lot of them were cumulative and redundant, which is to be expected in this kind of a forum, but I did want to hone in on just a couple of things that apparently at the neighborhood workshops, there was a lot of discussion regarding and finger pointing to our clients regarding, hey, why don't you just build on what you have? And apparently a lot of the owners, and I think the first gentleman who spoke today said the same thing. He said, and I wrote it down, he said, I don't have any objection to these owners building on what's currently zoned RSF1. And I wonder whether he realizes as he says that what's currently zoned RSF1 is substantially wetlands area, which he also mentioned was a concern of his. As has been indicated and reiterated throughout the long evening, what we're proposing to do, what the applicant is proposing to do, is to increase the protection for what is currently wetlands and move what's currently wetland designated, or OUC designated, to RSF1, which is a natural upland. Beyond that, the other gentleman who spoke, Mr. Hill, was very honest with the commission tonight and stated that he talked to somebody at zoning and they told him they'll never be able to build there, and that person apparently was potentially wrong depending upon what happens from here on out. And he also mentioned his primary concern was the wetlands. And again, I wonder whether these owners, how many of them realize that what we're actually proposing to do here is to increase the zoning protection for wetlands and move it, swap it to areas that are currently uplands to an RSF1 designation. And that's all we wanted to say on rebuttal.
Commissioner Mast.
You want to discuss? Commissioner Morris.
I will
Commissioner
place
Morris.
myself on the petard before you make a motion. To me, this And the questions that I asked zoning about OUC and what that means, and is there precedent for switching from OUC? There's been plenty of OUR that we've rezoned here, which makes perfect sense, but OUC being conservation makes me look at it in a little bit different light. And this, to me, does not seem like a good deal for Sarasota County. We are being asked to take what could be considered environmentally sensitive land, even though it is technically upland, it's sort of upland, and swap it for something that's zoned RSF1 that is currently wetland, for the most part. And yes, you could mitigate all kinds of things on that RSF1. In fact, you could probably even take some of some other mitigated property and make it upland and transform that RSF. But there's plenty of RSF1 wetland property that will never be built on, and for good reason. So to me, you know, I know that nobody likes to use the word swap, but that's what they're asking for. And this is not a good trade for the community. It's not a good trade for Sarasota County. You've got to, in order for me to support an application that asks someone to go from OUC to RSF, and the fact that the applicant has come before us and has given us drawings that says we're going to put one house, single-family house on there, but they're absolutely not willing to stipulate that, it's just not a good deal for me. So I don't know where everybody else comes out on it, but I'm not for this application. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Morris. Any further discussion warranted before Commissioner Mast proceeds to a motion? Of course, upon which we can continue discussion. Okay, Commissioner Mast.
Based upon the evidence and testimony received in the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission recommend denial of rezone petition number 1904 with the following findings and facts.
Those being?
Yeah, I had that happen once, too.
Multiple points. I have lived in this community since I was young, very, very young. As long as I can remember, and I've been in building and construction my entire adult life, I cannot recall at all ever having a swap like this before where there was OUC switched or any other sensitive lands, in this case that I can recall. I think that this applicant knowingly purchased the property in its current state, and I totally agree with Commissioner Morris when I think this is the county would get the raw end of the deal, and the community would get the raw end of the deal on this one. And for those reasons, I cannot support it.
All right, we have a motion on the table. We have a second by Commissioner Strelick. Any further commentary to your motion, Commissioner Mast?
Just that I want to thank all of you from the community who carried yourselves in a very professional manner tonight. I thank you for your facts and your research. There's two things that I would like to say that might seem confusing to you. When we sit on this board, it's not about emotions, although your emotions are very important. We are guided by very strong regulated land use and what our comp plan says and what our unified development code says and all those things. And so we have to factor all those issues, and sometimes you like us and sometimes you hate us. And I thank you for carrying yourselves in a professional manner tonight. I would strongly suggest, as just a friendly, if this property goes up for sale, you might want to purchase it as a community, just a suggestion. And I would continue to ask you to carry yourselves in a professional manner, whether you care for what the decisions are that come down or not. That's what makes us an incredible community.
Thank you, Commissioner Mast. To your second, Commissioner Strelick.
I would only add to what's already been said by Commissioner Mass and Commissioner Morris that there's a safety issue out there, and although people in the fire department can make agreements and that kind of thing, it doesn't change the fact. I think that's a real danger here, and that's another reason that I don't support this.
Any additional commentary? All right, I will comment before we call the question. I think, we have a pretty formalized, if you will, swap program in the county called transfer of development rights. There's places where we encourage swapping of things to create intended consequences. The applicant opened with a statement calling equal land for equal land. I think that's just a miscategorization of what's happening here. The only thing equal in it is about the relative size. And to state a measure that you're going to take these two parcels that have nothing built on it and then you're going to build something on it and it's better for the environment is kind of a stretch. And you don't see the evidence of that really coming out in the application itself as it relates to the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. So, however this vote falls, it's going to move forward to the county commission one way or the other. And I think falling on an argument of equal land for equal land doesn't hold up under the goals, objectives, and policies of our comprehensive plan. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor of a motion to deny, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries unanimously.